going on, everybody? Welcome into the Highlight, a business podcast for business people. And today I have my good new friend, Kyle Brogdon, on. Kyle, am I saying your last name right? I'm just realizing I don't think we checked before we got on
here.
You
got it.
Hey,
you nailed it the first time. And that's unique.
Go. What do they say about blind squirrels and finding nuts and all that? You know, my South Georgia accent doesn't do me any favors when it comes to pronouncing people's names. So I'm constantly worried about messing that up. But Kyle is the senior director of marketing at Healthicity, and he's based out in Nashville with me here. And Kyle, I just want to say welcome to the show, man. Thanks for taking some time with us.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it. Good to talk with you. And I just heard you say South Georgia too. I didn't know that about you either. I grew up in Metro Atlanta.
Okay, cool.
I've got some roots down in South Georgia too.
Well, now we got to turn this into a sports podcast. Are you a sports fan at all? Do you like the Braves and the Falcons and Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, not the last one. I chose the other side when I was young.
Oh, the Georgia Tech fan.
Mark Price in college basketball.
Smart.
That swung me over to Georgia Tech. So
yeah,
we're pretty terrible at football these days, but no, it's what you have to do sometimes.
Hey, I would love to have y'all's basketball success. Georgia's having a nice run with football, but basketball has always been brutal and it's frustrating. So I'm not going to turn it into a sports podcast, even though I very easily could. There's two things. Have you ever heard that joke? It's like, what could you give an impromptu TED talk on for 45 minutes? I got two things: marketing and Georgia football. Like those two things, I could give you a solid 45.
Very nice. Mine could be marketing and aquariums.
Aquariums. All right, we're gonna end the episode with talking about aquarium. I'm bummed my business partner Austin isn't on the show because he would freak out if he knew you liked aquariums, because he's got, I don't know how big that tank is, probably like a 25-gallon tank or something. Like, is that big? Is that right? Does that sound right?
That's not very big.
Yeah, it's not super big. You know, it would probably fit on one of these shelves, like maybe not height wise, but width wise. And he said, you know, he's got ADHD and he's like, I love it. I love having stuff around me and moving and lights and all that. And he was trying to convince me that the company needed an L-shaped aquarium that goes into the corner of his office. And we that's still on the committee hearing. We haven't approved that yet.
That's going to have to be a budget variance. That's not going to be cheap.
Yeah. Well, I would love for you to just take a minute and just sort of give everybody a little bit of the background on you, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up in Metro Atlanta. Had been in Georgia for most of my life. I went to Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville, Georgia. It's the state's liberal arts university, and my major was in mass communication. So, kind of my background was a blend of PR and marketing, advertising, broadcast, all the above PR. And so had various roles in different types of communication / marketing companies coming up. And as I went through different careers in different industries, just learned more and found the things that I was good at around branding, around messaging. And, you know, when digital really exploded 15, 20 years ago, that was something I was just really natively really good at. So I've become pretty good at teaching people about digital marketing, and that's weird coming from an older guy with all these young folks around, but I'm not a digital native, so it's new to me. But yeah, so I have been marketing communications director, manager, many different things in healthcare, obviously, and a couple of hospitals, one in Atlanta and one in Nashville area, in higher education at a university, and also in some nonprofit organizations. So
I like the old headness. I mean, because here's the thing: the internet is great. It is lowered or what am I trying to say here? It has evened the playing field for everybody. You know, there's not as many gatekeepers. There's more opportunity. You know, back in the day, you know, and you could do pre-digital for me. You know, you'd have to spend a lot of expense making a TV commercial and then running it, and it's just very cumbersome. Versus now, you take a picture on your phone. Heck, you could record a video on your phone that's pretty high quality and run an ad against it. So, I would love to know from your perspective, like, what's has advertising changed from I'm trying to think how to say this. Like, is advertising more or less the same and just the medium has changed with it being on the internet, or is it actually still the same, or is it totally different?
I mean, I think the core of advertising is the same of getting in front of the audience that you're trying to get in front of,
Yeah.
getting their attention, um, speaking to them in a way that meets the need or the struggle that they're facing, and then convincing them that they need what you have to sell or what you have to offer. So the core of advertising has not changed. I mean, it's finding the people who need what you're offering and convincing them that you're the one who can deliver that. But yeah, how it gets done has changed dramatically. I mean, the conversation that you were just saying of, the old way you had to produce advertising versus what you can do now. And what I was thinking when you were saying that was, even if that was available 20 years ago, most CEOs, most CFOs, anyone who you reported to, any board that you had to report to, would vehemently say, we are never ever going to use a video that's that low quality or that's not polished and that doesn't have a beautiful, scripted background. And there was nothing organic that was approved.
Yeah.
Organic messaging wasn't advertising 20 years ago. It was all very scripted, very polished. Customer testimonials were not highly sought. If they were written, and they were didn't have photos because what happens if that person goes to a different company or a different product, or gets arrested or ends up on a billboard. So the delivery of it has changed drastically. The way it gets done has changed drastically, but the core of what you're trying to do is the same.
I I could spend all day talking about people and their opinions on what looks good and what is on brand, and my argument is always for, let's just try a bunch of stuff and see what works and not have our ego so tied up in things. Austin and I talk about this all the time. We're down to try anything as long as it doesn't bankrupt the brand or bankrupt the company, and everything else is sort of like is fixable and testable, and you can bounce back from it. Now, if you put some giant slur thing in the middle of your messaging, like, that's going to be a problem. But like something that's made to look more organic versus a highly polished piece of content or ad going out. It's funny. I was having 5 years ago. I was still having arguments. I mean, probably 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, still having a bunch of arguments with people about how they needed to focus on making ads that looked more organic, like they would fit in somebody's Facebook feed or Instagram feed, and not look like they were published in an advertising house, because there's some sort of like defense mechanism, I feel like, that pops up when somebody sees a highly produced thing in the ad. We see that when we're running ads for clients. The more produced the content is, the higher the CPM is, almost every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just because people's filters have become refined. They can spot what's fake. They can spot what's not genuine. They know if you've got a customer testimonial and it's obviously an actor. They're going to be able to know. So I think that's just the evolution of the way people have consumed content over the years has changed drastically. And with that, their ability to see what's organic and what's not isn't. One more thing on that last thing you said about what you like. One of the best lessons that I've learned in my career, I think, was I was working with an agency when I was on staff at a hospital in Metro Atlanta. And we were, testing out new ad campaigns, and they brought in 5 different variants of their creative and their copy and their call to actions. And we would go around the table, and, all the C-suite guys and the VPs would look at things and, oh, I really like that, and I like that, and I don't like that, and I don't like that, and I like that. And I don't even remember who it was, if it was my boss or someone from the agency, but they just said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you like, doesn't matter what you like, it doesn't matter what I like, it matters what works. And so like whenever we're in a conversation about building content, images, even if you're like, this is the brand and we cannot deviate from the brand. Well, the brand has to be guide rails. It has to be, there has to be some wiggle room in there, because if you set your brand and 6 months down the road it stops working, you can't say, well, I really like that, so we're going to keep doing it. Yeah.
Whoever the leader was that made that call is pretty smart. I mean, it's the hippo method, right? The highest paid person's opinion. That's usually who wins those arguments in bad organizations. And it's
Yeah.
expensive when you play those political games, and it catches up to you. You said something a minute ago that I'd like to go back to. The right audience is something that has transcended both traditional advertising back in the day versus digital advertising now. We're still looking for the right audience, and we see a lot of things change. But with targeting, with Facebook and everything else, like people, what we see time and time again is that small business owners who we work with primarily end up saying, hey, our service is for everybody. Our product is for everybody. And they are afraid to sort of hone in on a specific avatar, or maybe two specific avatars. Like, I'd be happy with two or three, and they want to give me infinite. I mean, it's almost I mean, Kyle, you would laugh at how many times I've had. I mean, you've probably had the same conversation. It's like, no, it's for everybody. And you're just like, it's not.
Everybody needs this. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. So, like, can you talk about how important it is to find the right audience and maybe some things you do to make sure you're targeting the right audience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if I were you, I would tell your customers, okay, you're absolutely right. Everyone should need this, but I'm going to need to quadruple your budget. Because if we spend that much money hitting everyone, you're going to spend a lot more money. But yeah,
all that wisdom right there. I've never thought of that. That's good. That will 100% be in a sales pitch in the next 6 months at High B Marketing. 100%.
I mean, if you want to hit that many people, potential targets, it's going to cost you a lot more money.
That's so good.
Choosing the warmest audience before you ever send any messaging to them, before you ever get in front of their face, is the way you're going to be most effective and the way you're going to spend the least amount of money to get the results you want. Yeah, and the way to do that, I'm sure you and your agency probably do a great job of that, but it depends on the product. It depends on the specific conversion you're wanting. It depends on how much money that person's willing to spend, the timing of if the need is correct at that time. But identifying the people who are interested in what you have and who have the ability to get what you have and have the need met by what you're offering is going to make you much more effective. And as a business owner who's using someone else for their marketing agency, is going to save them a whole lot of money.
Yeah, we have we have like a flywheel system that we run all of our clients through. It starts at the top with problem and promise and person. And there's three parts to that top, but we don't start any of our work until we know who it is we're serving, what problem they have exactly that we're fixing, like what very specific problem are we fixing, and then do we have the promise is just a catch-all word because I like alliteration for services or products. And it's like you have to be able to line those three things up before you even launch any new venture or you hope to improve the one you've got, because a lot of times you've done a good job selling or doing something and getting your company to a certain level, and then all of a sudden you look back and you go, well, let's run some more ads and blow it up. But then you don't really know what exactly you're doing that's working. So it's like honing in, finding the data, actually making better decisions based on what the numbers say versus what, again, the hippo says, the highest paid person's opinion. So that's good. So we were talking a little bit offline about, you've had experience, you've been, like we were talking about just a minute ago too, both sides of the thing. Like, what is the, 20 years, what's the biggest myth about marketing that people just don't get?
The biggest myth about marketing. I would think it's probably that it's pretty easy. I think most people see marketing, the end product of marketing, and they see a brochure or a commercial or a billboard or a print ad or a social ad, and they say, oh yeah, anybody can do that. Anybody can write. There's a lot of people who are good at taking pictures. There are a lot of good people who are good at, I can make a website on Wix in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So it's just pretty easy. And, they just have no idea the science that goes behind it. And like what you just talked about, the building a map of what needs to be done to make what you do effective. And they see the tip of the iceberg and they say, oh, those people, anybody can do that. That's pretty easy. It's just, making pretty pictures and making people go to websites.
Oh my gosh,
But
this is going to trigger
being
me with my
effective.
social media platform. This is like everybody that has a 20-year-old niece in their company that's like, hey, she just does social media for us.
Yeah,
It's
and
across
she
the
could
board.
do it. She could
Yeah,
do it, and it might go okay, and it might get your company sued for millions of dollars.
that one.
So,
Yep, maybe. No, that's good. Yeah, it does come up a lot. Is it? I don't know who first coined this phrase, but it's the T-shaped marketer. You know, where you have all the different disciplines of marketing. You know, email,
hmm,
social media, communications, yada yada. Um, and that's all across the top board. And then you want to pick one of those disciplines to go really really deep in, especially early on in your marketing career. But as a company, when you start, you need somebody that's really broad in marketing that knows how to do well enough in all those different disciplines
yeah,
because you have to do them. Like your company has to be sending emails. Like it's non-negotiable. You have to have an email list and you have to send emails. You have to have a social media presence. You have to spend time doing that. But as you grow and scale, then all of a sudden you start investing more money and getting specialized people to be able to go, hey, it's worth it to hire somebody that really knows how to run paid ads and save you. You know, if they make the ads perform 10% better and you're spending $10 million a year, that's $1 million. Like that's a
yeah,
very good ROI on whatever their salary is most times. But I've run into that as well. I like hearing you say that because a lot of people come to me like, oh yeah, just put it together. We can do that, no problem. I've seen it
yeah,
happen 100 times, like no issues. And it's like this is editing videos is the thing that I always run into with people where they're like, hey, can I just get this back tomorrow after we just shot
yeah.
today? And I'm like, you
Don't you
could.
don't you have iMovie? Don't you just yeah,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So the next question I have then, building on that one, is like, so we've beat up on people on the outside they're looking at the marketers giving us a hard time, but like internally, us as marketers, you know, what should we stop doing and what should we look to start doing to be better marketers for our organizations?
yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned, and I've gone through seasons, you always feel like, well, if I just knew this thing, I would be so much better. If I just knew that thing, I would be so much better. And we're always hunting for the next great podcast. No offense to your podcast, or the next great book, or the next great seminar that's
Yeah,
just going to like be the golden ticket, and it's going to solve all of our problems for us. And yes, it's very good to continue to learn and continue to educate, but um, I found myself just chasing that so much and not trusting what I knew and what I was good at, and not trusting the circle of influencers that were right next to me, not because they had 15,000 followers on Instagram or anything, but just because they were in my network and I knew they were good at their job. Um, just always trying to chase that. Oh, I've got to learn these 5 things and read these 5 books. And if I'm driving home from work and I'm not listening to a podcast about business, then I'm doing it wrong. And sometimes you've just got to slow down and you've got to say, hey, I've got skills. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to get it right every time, but I'm going to continue to learn and I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm not going to beat myself up for not being the perfect marketer. And frankly, stop trying to write a book. Like, there are enough marketing books. Um, not everyone needs to write a book. And if you're writing a book, that's fine. But
yeah.
that doesn't justify your existence until you're not a real marketing expert until you write a book. So
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Everybody that we've been on a sales call with, they're like, "Hey, I would use your agency, but you've never written a book. So if you haven't
yeah.
written the book on marketing, how can I use you?" That's funny.
And I will not be closing this out by saying, and you should buy my book because I don't have a book.
We can't get the
Um,
Brogdon's thoughts on marketing for
there
2023 and
is
beyond.
there is not a book.
Oh my gosh. I well, you can see behind me, I've read a lot of books. I like reading, but I have found, to your point, a lot of them suck. Like most of these books back here are just here for looks. Like they don't actually ever get opened again. Maybe very rarely, like once every 5 years, do I go back and try to find an idea out of one of them. And I think it's because back to what we talked about just a minute ago, people will write a book just because they think it's a good idea to write a book. People will launch a new product or service just because they think it's a good idea to launch a new product or service. And they should start with, what
Yeah.
problem specifically is this book solving for me? Because back like we just talked about T-shaped marketers and how many disciplines there are inside of marketing. It's like you're going to write one generic broad marketing book for all those like that's just it's never gonna work.
Yeah.
Like it's just gonna end up being filled with nonsense, and you're gonna have to go do the podcast touring, and you're gonna have to PR yourself into hopefully selling
Yeah.
4,000 copies and call it a day.
And there are a lot, to clarify, there are a lot of very good marketing books, and a lot of them really shaped, the way I think about things. And you said, where do you start? Well, start with why. Simon Sinek is one of the best ones I would say people start with. But
Yep.
again, it's just like, don't continually chase the information that you think you don't have. Rely on the information that you have.
How do you know when it's
Because
time to go get new information though? Like internally for you?
probably when you start seeing things that other people are doing, and you like, well, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing the same things you've been doing for a while, and they're just not working anymore.
Yeah.
Which, if that's happening, that's a problem anyway, because having a Kaizen mindset of I've got to keep refining what I'm doing, or I'm going to look up one day and it's just not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I also like to practice and preach is, I think most marketers build a campaign and strategize a campaign and plan a campaign and launch the campaign, and they're like, all right, we're done. And it's like, nope, when you launch the campaign, that's the start of the campaign. Like if you're not monitoring and changing and optimizing, so that's kind of the signal of when, how do we make sure that we're not being left behind? Why are, things going on that I just have no idea what's going on, and what I'm doing now isn't working anymore. So
Yeah, I was talking to Austin, my co-founder and co-host of this podcast, sometimes about Zuckerberg's insistence on spending all this Facebook money to build the metaverse. And I don't know if he's smart or not for doing that, but like he seems to think Web3 and virtual reality is going to be this huge thing. And maybe it is, but I've read 0 books on Web3 or virtual reality or any of that stuff, because I think we may be on the same page. I'm never trying to predict the future. I'm trying to be one of the early adopters. So I didn't try to predict whether or not social media was going to be a great avenue for advertising your business. I just looked around and said, everybody I know is on Facebook. Everybody I know is downloading this thing called Instagram. I know that I tested some ads on it and was getting, 10,000 views on something for $5 back in 2014. Can we bring that back, by the way? Because that was and it was
before
all
the algorithm messed up everything.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was all testing and iterating, and back to your point of like we launched and we stayed in the thing and we kept looking for ways to improve it. But I didn't predict that Facebook was going to be a thing. You look around and you say, hey, people are doing things that we're not doing, and it seems to be working for them. So we need to get in there and feel it out and see if it would work for our business. But I think a lot of times some people are afraid to do that just because they're worried about either the optics of it or failing, or maybe there's a lack of trust inside the organization. I'm not sure what stops people from trying new things when it should be tried.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear there, but I think also, like you were saying, you have to see, like you were talking about, seeing what your friends were doing. You have to see the way people are communicating, using tools, living every day, and you can't expect your potential customer to do something that you're not doing or nobody else is doing. And that's kind of the thing, like with the Web 3.0 or whatever. That may happen, but it may not. And it's kind of like Zuckerberg saying, this is how people should communicate in the future. This is how people should communicate in the future. This is how, but nobody's doing it. So it's just going to kind of dry up and go away.
Yeah. Not to stay on this too long, but I don't know if you saw this. He spent basically the same dollars as the 50s when they sent a man to the moon with the Apollo missions. Like it's basically, he has spent the same amount of money and we're no closer to being on the moon. I mean, I'm
his money.
His money and everybody else that owns the stock. Good for you. So after you've been in the game for as long as you have, you have to have picked up some tools along the way. I would love to know, what are some of your favorite tips, tricks, things that we can use to be better marketers ourselves, if you wouldn't mind sharing them.
Ah, actual physical tools, digital tools, any of the above?
Anything, books. I mean, to
Anything.
start with, Why Book is a awesome. I love that. I mean, that's a great first book for any marketer to read for sure.
Yeah, really good book. I would say kind of a tool, kind of a resource. Uh, Content Marketing Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys.
Oh,
Robert Rose.
yeah.
Um, Listening to their marketing podcast, This Old Marketing, for a long time. It's got a lot of really good information on that. Tools I like to use. I have lots of digital things. Just um, we use Asana at our current company. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes,
Oh
but
my gosh, can I tell you
I
how much I love Asana? My again, Austin is he's our integrator, which is basically like a chief operations officer. He makes sure the wheels stay on the bus, and he and
yeah
our other guy Ben introduced this Asana thing to me, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then all of a sudden, I see these cards, and we like use them for project management, and it's
yeah
it's it's like Kanban, right? And that's the whole thing, and it game changer. It was a great way to
yeah
organize work, and we could communicate a lot better too as a team because it's like, hey, nobody's giving everybody a hard time because it's like you see what works on the board, you see what we're doing, so
yeah.
that's
Well, and
good.
that's the biggest thing I'd say about the digital tools. I'll wrap it up with that. Is you have to have a central source of truth.
Mm,
If you choose that to be something like Asana, great. If you choose that to be Trello, great. If you choose that to be Slack, great. But if you have Slack and texting and email and a project management system and a OneNote file, you're going to lose things and nobody's ever going to know where anything's at, and you're going to drive people crazy. So on the digital side, you've got to have that one place where this is where everything lives, this is where everything is, and it's got to be that way. On the non-digital tool side, I'm going to say a notebook and a pen, um, because that's just kind of, we live in such a digital world. Our brains need a digital break often. And so I would say a notebook and a pen, but also a quiet place and some silence. I think that's probably the most helpful tool I've had in the past several years, because if you get so deep in the noise every day, and you jump in and you swim in the noise all day, every day, you can't think straight anymore. So getting alone and having no phone and having nothing for a couple of hours, your brain will start to think in free ways. And oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that. I forgot all about that. And so getting out of that is a tool, I think. So silence is a tool that's probably not used enough.
yeah. I struggle with that one. I'm gonna have to add that to my list of things to do. The
Yeah.
quieting down of everything else because we are a go 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 culture for sure.
Leave your phone in the house, grab a pen and a notebook, and go hang out in the woods for a couple hours.
Yeah, I like that. I don't like. Let me be specific. I don't like it because I know it's a problem for me, and now I'm having to like
Yeah.
look in the mirror and go, you know what, Kyle might be right. I might be unplug just a little bit and get outside and breathe some air. Maybe read less of these books and think about what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. So that's good. I might call you though. Maybe I'll bring my phone and just call you and just see.
Can't take your phone. That's illegal.
That's the rule. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So this next question is a little bit of a curveball. We call it the 10x question. So if I was able to 10x your budget on your team, what would you go deploy those dollars against to make the company better?
I would spend it on additional people that I need, and giving the people that I have the tools and the benefits that they need to feel valued and appreciated, and to give them everything they do to make them love their job more and do their job more effectively. Um, I think, like many people say, and it's kind of cliche, but it's really not, is, your business is nothing without people.
Mm.
If you take care of your people, they're going to do good work. If you have happy employees do really good work. People in a toxic environment do not do good work. And especially in the last 3 years since the great resignation, quiet quit, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
people are stepping back and saying, man, I'm killing myself for this company. What am I doing? And do they even care?
Yeah.
Um, so if you take care of your people, if you invest your money in those people, um, I think that's the best way to spend that money.
Yeah, I like that. Do you have any sort of favorite ways to show people you care beyond, um, you know, recognition in a meeting, or maybe that is enough. I don't know.
Uh, Something that was really nice. I was at a physical hospital during COVID before this job, so I was a marketing communications director at a hospital, and we went through. This was goodness the first 2-3 months of it, and we had a nursing home of 95 patients evacuated and brought to our hospital on one night.
Wow.
And so I was dealing with the PR media relations circus related to that for about a week. And one day, my boss just sent me a gift of like 6 quarts of Jenny's ice cream showed up on my door.
Oh wow.
And it was just like, that was good stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you get a
So
favorite
just
flavor?
things like, yeah, mint chocolate chip. That's my go-to.
Oh man, you and my wife. My wife and my daughter. They love mint chocolate chip. I have to love it because it's all I'm allowed to buy.
Yeah.
It's
Good stuff.
it's funny when I was in the Air Force. Like as you were talking, I was thinking about things that leaders I used to have, what they did that made me feel valued. There was this colonel that we had, Colonel Daniels, and he would walk around every morning at 8 a.m. or 30 minutes after everybody got in the office, more or less, and he would just shake everybody's hand and just say, "How you doing? Do you need anything?" And he made an effort of it every day, 10, 15 minutes. And I don't know if anybody ever actually took him up on, hey, can you do this for me? Because I was a little enlisted airman. I didn't say bleep to the colonel. I just basically said, "No, sir, I'm good. Thank you. Have a good day." And that was it. But it stuck with me. That was what, 15 years ago now, or 10, 15, something like that. But I mean, it still sticks with me that he would walk around and take the time to just, hey, we're here. Do you need anything? Da, da, da. I think there's a lot of value in face to face and just, hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And then if they actually ask for something, following through. I know you just seem to be in that story. You were just dealing with it and getting through it and all the things. And so your leader to come in and just say, hey, we're proud of you. You keep crushing it. That's cool. That's a good story. I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
good stuff.
I'm out of questions here. We've gone through my entire gambit. I like to ask this last question sometimes about just, is there anything we didn't ask that we should have? Because that sometimes is the best stuff. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, you already talked about Georgia Bulldogs, so we're not going there.
We could do a tight 20 on Georgia, no doubt.
Marketing related, or oh my goodness, I'm a big soccer fan. Should have talked about that. World Cup, man.
World Cup was great. This will come out. All of that'll be over. But we got another game Saturday. What do you think?
We're going to call a prediction, and we're going to say that U.S. is going to win the World Cup. No, we're not.
I love it. I'm going to Brandon, stop the edit right there.
We got a chance. We got a chance against the Netherlands. We got a chance. I call it a coin toss there.
Fun to watch so far. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Now that we're talking about marketing stuff, with the soccer team, what do you think about the whole the soccer social media person that posted the Iran flag without the little emblem in the middle? You talk about
that was a bad idea.
Hot button issues, man. Woof.
Well, the biggest issue with that particular issue, and that goes back to our earlier conversation of who are you giving the keys to your social media profile? Somebody might want to make a social comment and say, hey, we're going to make this social comment, and not think, oh, there's 150, 200-year history between these two nations, geopolitical conflict involving nuclear weapons. And, maybe we should ask the State Department if we should do this and insult their country. It's probably not a good idea.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's all,
but that's back to the lesson of, it's easy. Just give it to the 20-year-old. She can drive your social media account and Photoshop another country's flag.
Yeah. That was, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully nothing comes out of that and we just get away with it and it all goes away and it's nice and buttoned up, but we'll see. Well, Kyle, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, man. We got to have you back on in a couple months and just check in, and we'll check in on your prediction that U.S. is going to win the World Cup. That's what I heard.
I
That's
didn't
what
say
Brandon
that.
edited in.
That was. I hope it happens, but I don't think
Yeah,
it's going to
that
happen.
would be cool. I would love a competitive game against the Netherlands. I'm with you. I'm right there
Yeah.
with you. So, well, we'll make sure to link up all of your.
For the record, I'm putting my money on Spain. That's where I'm at right
Okay.
now. Okay.
All right, I like it. Spain. We've got
All
it
right.
down as a note. Well, Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by and sharing the wisdom, man. This was really awesome. We appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody out there that's listening. And we will see you next week. Peace.